Could you imagine designing an entire civilization? I don't mean just, influencing it. I mean writing the actual source code for its government, its families, its morals, everything. Well, for over 2,000 years, one man's ideas did exactly that for China. This is the story of Confucius, a philosopher who ended up becoming the architect of an empire. To really get Confucius, you first have to understand the world he was born into. And honestly, it was completely shattered. We're not talking about a little political instability here. This was a time of absolute chaos, nonstop warfare, and the kind of misery that makes people question, well, everything. Historians have a name for it, the Spring and Autumn period. And what that really means is that the central government, the Zhou dynasty, had totally collapsed. In its place, you had this huge power vacuum filled with hundreds of tiny states, all scratching and clawing for dominance. It was a mess. So let's break that down. What did this chaos actually look like for the people who had to live through it every single day? Okay, so you've got the central kings being basically powerless. Local lords become tyrants. And their main tool for control wasn't leadership, it was raw, brutal law, known as fa. And when I say brutal, I mean punishments like mutilation, public executions. It got so bad people started saying, when a state is ready to die, it produces more laws. That really tells you everything you need to know. This was the crisis Confucius was born to solve. And into this world of just complete violence and decay, a man was born who was convinced there had to be a better way. His name was Kong Chu, but we know him today as Confucius. Now, he was technically born to a noble family, but they'd fallen on really hard times, and things got even worse when his father died when he was just 3. So he grew up in poverty, raised by his mom. But it was that first-hand experience with misery that really lit a fire in him. For him, this wasn't some abstract philosophical problem. It was real, and he was desperate to fix it. This quote from his favorite student just blows my mind. It really captures the incredible ambition of what they were trying to do. The goal wasn't just to win a war. It was to make war itself totally obsolete. A society so peaceful, so harmonious, that people would literally melt down their swords and turn them into farming tools. I mean, wow, that's the kind of peace he was chasing. So what was the grand plan? What was his solution? Well, it was a complete blueprint for a perfect society, and it was all built around one single powerful idea. And that idea was Li. Now, Li often gets translated as just ritual or etiquette, but that doesn't even begin to cover it. Think of Li as the entire operating system for a good society. It's this huge network of social rules, ceremonies, and just proper behavior that, if everyone followed it, would create harmony from the inside out. It was a way for a ruler to lead by moral example, not by brute force. And the engine that made Li work was a set of 5 key relationships. Confucius believed that if every single person understood their role and fulfilled their duties in these relationships, a ruler acting like a proper ruler, a father like a proper father, then society would basically fix itself. Order wouldn't come from some top-down law. It would grow naturally from the family unit and spread all the way up to the state. It's a pretty radical idea, right? To really appreciate how revolutionary this was, you have to see what he was arguing against. His main philosophical rival was something called legalism, or fa, and the difference couldn't be more clear. Confucius wanted to create order through internal goodness, through virtue. The legalists, they wanted order through external fear. So Li was all about teaching people to want to do the right thing. Fa was about making them too terrified to even think about doing the wrong thing. Now, Confucius wasn't some academic who was happy to just debate these ideas in a classroom. Oh, no. He wanted to get his hands dirty. He wanted to put his blueprint into practice and change society from the very top. And you know what? For one very brief, shining moment, he actually got his chance. At 50 years old, after years of just teaching, he was appointed to a major government job in his home state of Louisiana. And the irony is just perfect. His title was Minister of Crime. But yeah, his political career didn't last long. As the story goes, a rival state got nervous about how well things were going in Lu under Confucius's guidance. So they sent the Duke of Lu a little gift, 100 amazing horses and 80 dancers. And the Duke? Well, he was completely distracted. He blew off his duties for 3 whole days just to party. For Confucius, this was it, the ultimate failure of leadership. He was so disappointed that he just resigned and left.
starting what would become 14 years of exile.
He never did find another ruler willing to try his ideas. Confucius died in 479 BC, and by all accounts, he probably thought his entire life's work had been a total failure. But he was wrong, because his students, who were completely devoted to him, had memorized everything he said. They carefully gathered all his conversations and sayings and put them into one book that would, no exaggeration, change the world, the Analects.
So the man himself might have failed in his own lifetime, but his ideas, they were just getting started. This is where the story gets really good.
So you have to wonder, did this philosophy that seemed to fail so badly when he was alive, did it ever actually make it out of the classroom and into a real government? Well, at first, things actually got worse. The very first dynasty to unify China, the Qin, they were hardcore legalists. They burned Confucian books and even buried scholars alive. But their dynasty didn't last long. The next one, the Han, they had a different idea. They realized you can't build a lasting empire on fear. So they revived Confucianism and made it the official state ideology. And that led to an institution that would cement his legacy for centuries, the imperial examination system.
Just let that number sink in. 1,300 years. For 1,300 years, that's longer than the entire Roman Empire even existed. This system, based on his ideas, was the main way to get power and respect in China. And this chart really shows you the result. By the time of the later dynasties, a staggering 90% of all government officials were what they called scholar bureaucrats. They didn't inherit their jobs, they earned them by passing these incredibly difficult exams on Confucian philosophy. Think about that. The most powerful empire on the planet was being run by philosophers.
What that system did on a massive civilization-wide scale was make one of Confucius's most radical ideas a reality. It created a totally new kind of aristocracy. Not an aristocracy of blood, but one of merit. Your power was based on how well you understood moral philosophy, not on who your dad was. That is a complete game changer. So the man who died thinking he was a failure ended up being the chief architect of a civilization. His blueprint for society became the bedrock of Chinese culture for thousands of years, which leaves us with one last pretty big question. How does a 2,500-year-old plan for how to live together still shape our world, and maybe even our own lives today?